First and foremost, I want to give all honor, all glory, all praise to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahweh Shai, Bahashem, Rekah, Kadash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and the elders, the great millstone, and to the Akim and the Akwaf that are listening and learning. To you, I say Shalom. This Bam Malak coming at you with another lesson. And this lesson is inspired by an article I was reading out of The Guardian. And let's just begin. It say, last week, Rick Santorum repeated a widely held myth of U.S. exceptionalism. We came here and created a blank slate. We birthed a nation from nothing. So when he talking about we, he talking about the so-called white man, the European American. He's saying that they came here and they created a blank slate. They're not going to take into account, the hard bondage, the slavery that you Negroes served. He's not going to take into account that the tribe of Gad and North American so-called Indian taught them how to agriculture, taught them how to fish, taught them all types of trades when the Europeans came over here to the Americas. So he's not going to take into account any of that. Why? Because that's what the so-called white man do, the Edomite do. They leave you Negro, Latinos, and Native Americans. They leave y'all completely out of the history books. Let's continue the article. The former U.S. Senator and CNN commentator told a right-wing Young American Foundation Summit, it was born of the people who came here. His, we, doesn't include. Now the writer of this article is saying, he's telling Rick Santorum, his and we don't include the indigenous people, so-called Native Americans, and it's definitely not going to include you so-called Negroes who was made to serve hardcore bondage, with shackles around your neck and around your ankles. He's not going to take into account that they did all this free labor off the back of you Negro, Latinos, and Native Americans. It's to include indigenous people who were already here or African people who were brought here in chains. And that blank slate required violent pilferage of two continents, Africa and North America. And we know we're not from Africa. We're from Jerusalem. We're from Israel. And Jerusalem is a people before it's a place, if you can receive this. He said, were brought in chains, and the blank slate required violent pilferage of two continents, Africa and North America. If the United States was birthed from nothing, then the land of enslaved labor that made the wealth of this nation must have fallen in the sky, because it surely didn't come from Europe. And the writer, he's just showing the Rick Santorum that, he's really, his racist views, are just, it's just beside himself, really, because you cannot take into account the wealth that America have created and the nation became without, the indigenous people, so-called Native Americans, and the so-called black man and the so-called Latino, because we did all the hardcore, the slave labor. We did all of these things, our people, our ancestors. So again, this article is pretty long. You can go back, you can go to the Guardian and you can read it. Now we're just going to come up with a couple precepts, and the first one is going to be the wisdom of Solomon, chapter 5, verse 1, and read, then shall a righteous man stand in great boldness before the face of such have afflicted him and made no account of his labor. So Rick Santorum, he made no account of the so-called Native Americans, the so-called black man, or the so-called Latino. He made no account of their labor that took place to make America great. Why? Because that's what Esau do. They write you Negro, Latinos, and Native Americans out of the history books. Why? Because you don't matter. To them, you don't matter. You was just a stepping stone to be used and forgotten. And history always have repeated itself, because it's going to repeat itself again, because you Negro, Latinos, and Native Americans going to be lifted up into your rightful state on the planet Earth. Yasharallah. Because you are the biblical Israelites. And when Israel always wake up, a nation always fall. When Israel woke up, a nation fell. If you can receive this. 2/3 won't receive this, but the hopeful elect will receive this. Now he's talking about the enslaved labor. The writer said the enslaved labor, right? Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. And the Lord, Yahweh, Bashem, Yahweh Shai, shall bring thee into Egypt, synonymous with bondage, again with ships, by way whereof I spake unto thee. Thou shalt see it no more again, and there ye shall be sold unto your enemies for bondmen and bondwomen, and no man shall buy you, no man shall redeem you. the Most High Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai, who the word ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, he's going to be our deliverer. He's going to redeem us out of this God-forsaken place. He's going to put us back in our rightful position of the earth, God's. And again, 2/3 won't receive this. But the hopeful elect, that remnant, going to wake up and come back to the God of Abraham, Isaac, and of Jacob. And his name is Yahweh, Ba'Shem Yahweh Shai. And he said, you know, they came here from nothing. But we know that the tribe of Gad was already here in North America. Genesis chapter 49 and 19. Gad, a troop will overcome him, but he shall overcome at the last. So as we build this tabernacle of David, and the southern and the northern kingdom come back, those two branches, you know, come back together, then we're going to overcome in the end. Again, Rick Santorum, he's not going to take into account, you know, what Gad did. He's not going to take into account that those heathens didn't even know how to farm land. They didn't know how to fish. You know, and this is my last precept. I'm going to come out of 2 Peter chapter 2 and verse 18 and read. For when they speak great swelling words, and this talking about false prophets, and you can have false prophets within Israel and outside of Israel. All the heathen nations who you see those pastors in the churches talking about, they are prophets. They're not prophets. They are false prophets. For when they speak great swelling words, and great swelling words is what Rick Santorum was speaking. He was saying that they came here and created a blank slate. That's great swelling words when he didn't take into account the labor that the Negro, Latino, and Native Americans, you know, provided and served here in America. They allure through the lust of their flesh. You know, he's pride. He pride. He gonna boast and not. And again, he's not gonna mention that slave labor that helped create America. He's not gonna hint at that the Gad, they took all the land from the North American so-called Indian. Through lust of the flesh, through much wantonness, because they want everything. If someone got a natural resource, Esau Edom gonna go to that country and they gonna take it. Why? Because they was gifted with that the sword. Those that were clean escaped from them who live in error. And most of 2/3 of our people are living in error because they trust in what this man say. They trust in that blank history that was wiped away. So they telling y'all that y'all are black, y'all Native Americans, that y'all are Latinos. Why? Because they don't want you to know that your biblical nationality of being the Israelites that the Bible speaks of, Hebrew Israelites that the Bible speaks of. So they're going to speak great swelling words, especially in these last days. Because they're going to tell you, if you try to identify as calling yourself an Israelite in these last days, they're going to come at you with all the power and the authority that so-called white man have. So again, this lesson wasn't meant to be long. I want to give all honor, glory, and praise to the Most High Yahweh, Ba'Shem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Shem, Rekah. We're going to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, and to the Akim and Akwath that are listening and learning. To you, I say Shalom.